Hey everyone, Boxer Tech here. Today in this video we're going to show you how to replace the valve cover on the passenger side of a 99 Subaru Legacy Outback 2.5. And basically when I rebuilt the engine I got the wrong gaskets for it, didn't notice it, used the gaskets anyways, and ended up finding out that the gaskets were wrong, got some replacement ones in from Felpro, and got the new gaskets mailed to me at no charge from Rock Auto. So that kind of worked out. So basically in this video what we're going to do is remove the driver's side valve cover. If you haven't seen already, there's another video of me doing the driver's side left valve cover on this car, and we're basically going to do it without having to lift the engine up and remove any motor mounts or anything like that. And so this is basically the easy way of doing things. So a couple things that we need for this job: we need a 10mm socket, we need a ratchet with preferably a swivel head, a small extension. We're going to need a 10mm wrench, preferably one with a ratcheting head on the top of it. This way you don't hate yourself when you're trying to take one of the bolts out. One of the bolts does need to be taken out with a wrench, and the ratcheting one, as you've seen, as I've told you in my previous video, the ratcheting wrench actually makes all the difference and makes easy work of that rear cover bolt. So and we're also going to need some screwdrivers because we have to take off some of these clamps to get the assembly out of the way here. So I'm going to start working and taking this stuff off here, and then the next part I'm going to show you the bolts and the access on how to get to that side of the engine. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off this hose assembly right here and the air box. So I'm going to use a screwdriver to remove this clamp here. And once I have this clamp loose enough, I'm going to use my other Phillips screwdriver and remove this clamp here. I only need it loose enough just to take out the to move this hose. So now that it's loose, I'm going to actually flex it inwards, and I'm going to remove that hose here on the bottom. That's for the idle air controller. We're going to set that hose off to the side. I'm going to take off the connector for the mass airflow sensor. Two clips on either side of the air box. Air box comes off. We're going to set this connector off to the side here. So now we have easier access to this side of the engine here. So the first thing we're going to do is actually remove the spark plug wires here off the side of the engine. So now that we have this removed, I'm going to take out the spark plug wires that go into the side of the engine here. So I'm just going to give these a good tug. And we're going to set these out of the way. So now the easy part. And we're going to take our ratchet handle with our 8mm socket, and we're going to remove the cover bolts. Now this front one here is going to require the extension to make it reach because the cam cover is in the way. And again, that swivel head makes all the difference. If you can see here, the ratchet handle straight wouldn't normally clear the ABS brake lines, but the swivel head, it makes easy work of it and allows me to set the ratchet handle at its own pivot. While we have while we're doing that, we're also going to take off this top breather line here. Just pinch the little bracket, the little clamp. And we give it a good tug and it'll come right off. There we go. We're just going to set this off to the side here. We're going to continue to remove the bolts. Put those into our parts dish so we don't lose the piece. There's 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Now usually when doing this you might lose a little bit of oil when you take the lower bolts out. So make sure that you have something to catch the oil underneath the car. Alright, so the top 3 are out. The valve cover is free off the top. So now we're going to head to the bottom and we're going to remove 2 of the 3 bolts on the bottom. And I'll show you why here. Alright, so the reason that we're not going to take out all 3 from the bottom is on the bottom there, kind of at the tip of my finger, there's a bolt that's right up against the subframe. Now this is the bolt that we need the wrench with the ratcheting handle for. So the 2 of them over here in the middle and on the front of the cover are pretty easily accessible from underneath the car. So we can take those off with the ratchet with no problem. Then we're going to get in there with the ratcheting wrench and take the other one off from the top. Alright, so underneath here you can see there's the 3 cover bolts. So we can actually get the front 2 with the ratchet. We might be able to get the 3rd one with the ratchet because it's a short-headed ratchet, so we might be able to get it without the wrench. But I'll try it with the ratchet and see if it comes off that way. You can actually see the leak of the valve cover after taking off the top bolt. So like I said, it will leak a little bit of oil out. That's why we have the tarp here and the tarp right here. That it's an old tarp that'll catch the oil that drips off of there, so no big deal on that part. So I'm going to remove those 3 bolts from the cover here. Alright, so the bottom 3 valve cover bolts are off. I wasn't able to use the ratchet on the bottom bolt. I had to use my ratcheting wrench. So once all 3 of them are loose, we should just be able to give the valve cover a little tug, and it comes off, and then you should be able to slide it right out. And there we go. So now one thing to note, these gaskets here, if they're included in your kit, make sure that you replace these. As you can see, they're not in here right now because they're actually stuck still on the block. So I'm actually going to take these off. And you'll see that they came right off. Some of them will be stuck onto the spark plug tube gaskets will be still stuck onto the head. So the new kit came with these. I'm going to throw these ones out. Now one thing I do want to note, if you look at the bottom of the valve cover, you can actually see I actually filled in where the missing pieces of the gasket were. This was a fault of my own. The new gasket's actually much thicker than this. The new gasket actually sticks out a few millimeters actually from the side of the deck of the valve cover here. So a much better gasket design, and you can see that there is a ton of oil. If I were to take this old gasket out, there's a ton of oil that's been seeping into here. And it's been seeping down and leaking out of the back of the valve cover here. So I'm going to go ahead and prep the new gasket for installation, and I'm going to show you where they need to be, where we need to also use the packing fluid on the new valve cover gasket. So I just want to show you guys the difference between the two gaskets. So the black one is the one that I just took off. The blue one is the new one. You can see there's a major difference in the thickness of this gasket and in the sealing part of the gasket as well. The Felpro, this blue one here, actually has a nice sealing surface, where this one is just a thin piece of plastic, or a thin piece of rubber. So the other difference is, on the back of the gasket here, the blue one actually has two little tabs here. The black one does not. So that difference alone is enough to make it seep and start leaking oil from the valve cover gaskets, even though this black one here was brand new. So I will make sure that everybody knows which gaskets to look out for. Can't go wrong with Felpro. Felpro makes probably the best gaskets out there for this engine. So we're going to throw the new one on, and I'm going to show you the sealing of the sealing points on the gasket. Alright, so I have the new gasket in place. Now, the factory service manual recommends that you use some 3-bond packing fluid. Well, I looked up it also says you could use a compatible kind of gasket material. So I looked it up, and the one that was most recommended was this Permatex Ultra Black, and this is number 24105. This is the same stuff that I used in the rebuild of the engine. So we're going to seal it in 4 places. It's going to be on each side of the gasket here, where it goes into where the camshaft seals are. So we're going to seal it here, 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 and here with the gasket material. So we're just going to create an even bead on each side. And this is going to help those seals in the part to prevent it from leaking. So this has to set for probably about 5 minutes. I'm going to make sure the gasket's in the little journal right here. And then it's going to set for probably about 5 to 10 minutes, so it gets nice and tacky and holds that gasket in the place so it doesn't move when we go to try to put it in. So I'll be back as soon as the gasket material starts to set up. Alright, so now that the time has elapsed, I'm going to start to put the cover back on. So I got the cover in place, and I just hand threaded the top bolts a couple threads to get it to hold into place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the front cover bolt, and I'm not going to do it tight. I'm going to do it so that it holds the front of the cover on, because this is where the packing fluid sealant that we put on there is. We want to make sure that there's a good seal on that when it goes in. So we're going to put it a little bit, we're going to put a little snug on, a little more than hand tight on there. We're going to work our way to the back here. Back cover bolt on first. And you can see right here, it starts to push that seal closer and closer to the edge of the head. So once that's on there, we're going to do the middle one. I snug the middle one just a little bit more. I'm going to go underneath. I'm going to put the other 3 back in, and then we're going to come up top and put everything back together. Alright, so now we have all 6 bolts bolted up. Now we're going to go back in and we're going to put our breather hose back on with our little clamp here. And then we're going to put our spark plug wires back in. Make sure they click into place. Clean off a little bit of the oil I got on the air filter here. Gonna run our wiring back under here, put the air box assembly back together. And then our air tube. Remember, we have to hook this one back up to the idle control valve, or else it ain't gonna have a happy time when you go to start it back up. The idle hose is kind of a pain in the butt. But rest assured, we have connection. Tighten back up your hose clamps. Make sure that before you go starting it back up, you go underneath and clean the bottom of your engine to make sure that there's no residue oil on the bottom of it, and to make sure that you can properly check for leaks after you have replaced the valve cover gaskets. So with that, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to be doing lots of videos on this car and other Subarus that I own. So make sure that you like and subscribe on the channel. Comment below. All the products that I used in this will be linked in the description. Thanks.